San Francisco, open up your gate. Hurry, hurry, San Francisco, please don't make us wait.
Welcome back to The Place of Places, a deep dive into William Saroyan's 1972 memoir, Places Where I've Done Time. Chapter 1 of the book takes us to Tanforan Racetrack, San Francisco, 1932. Saroyan begins this chapter, "At Tanforan, I used to feel great. Why did a little San Francisco racetrack affect me that way? Well, some places are happy places, and some aren't, and that's pretty much all you can say about the matter. But if you think on it, you soon discover that no place is totally without happiness, possibly not even the grave." Right from the start, the theme of death comes at us. Most of the stories in this book are filled with the joy of nostalgia and reminiscing, but there is always the undertone that it all comes to an end quite naturally. The last few chapters of the book dig deeper into the metaphysical, but you can see it right here in the first few sentences too. Keep in mind, Saroyan would live another 9 years after this book was published, but his thoughts were turning inward. Tanforan. Technically, this racetrack was not in San Francisco, but in the suburb of San Bruno. And Saroyan does mention that he has to catch a lift from San Francisco, 8 miles away. The racetrack operated from 1899 to 1964, when it was destroyed by fire. When Saroyan was writing this, he probably knew it had been destroyed, further fitting into the theme of the book. Frank Capra filmed 2 of his movies at Tanforan, Broadway Bill in 1934 and Riding High, which gave us a peek at the place in action. Tanforan was Saroyan's happy place, but the history of the place is a mixed bag. The land was taken by the Spanish and used for grazing in the 1700s. Toribio Tanforan, a notable horseman, was related to the landowner of the ranch called Rancho Buriburi in the early 1800s. Prince Andrei Poniatowski, a local builder, financed the racetrack, which opened in 1899. Tanforan was a track for many types of races, including automobiles, horses, and planes. It was the site of the first ever aircraft carrier takeoff and landing in 1911, and the site for one of the first air meets, a precursor to air shows, in 1911. It struggled as a racetrack during the early 20th century due to anti-gambling laws in California that had to be carefully navigated. During World War I, it was converted into a military training camp, and Camp Tanforan was used by the U.S. Army. But its most grim usage was as an assembly center for Japanese Americans during World War II. From Tanforan, approximately 8,000 Bay Area Japanese American citizens were processed and housed in stables, temporary barracks, and the grandstands, awaiting relocation to segregation camps in other parts of California and the country. Saroyan corresponded with Oakland author Toshio Mori while Mori was held at Tanforan, and then when Mori was moved to the Topaz internment camp in Utah. Saroyan encouraged Mori to write about Tanforan center life, but it was still a bit too fresh a trauma for Mori. Saroyan called Mori the first real Japanese-American writer, in an introduction he wrote for Mori's book of short stories called Yokohama, California. What remains of Tanforan now? A shopping mall, naturally. But in 1932, it was a place for young men to make or lose their money. Saroyan writes, "Today's the day," Archie Manassian would shout from 50 yards away. "A winner in every race, money galore. People would look around and half smile, half scowl. We would walk back and forth, smoking cigarettes and shouting at each other. I was 24 and he was 19, my mother's kid sister's son. Archie was Saroyan's best friend for life, and they spent much of that time laughing together and gambling. A house painter by trade, but an artist at heart, Archie wrote poetry and prose that was published in Armenian-American periodicals as well as by local publishers. Once Saroyan made it big, he promoted Archie's work to publishers and producers, with little success. Archie's stomach for professional writing wasn't as big as William's, but he continued to write and then paint for the rest of his life in Palo Alto, California, with his wife and 6 children. When they were young, Archie worshipped William. As they aged, William envied and admired Archie's loving and secure family life, the type of life that evaded Saroyan. At one point in this story, Archie throws pennies for good luck. Saroyan responds, "You damn fool! One of those pennies might have been a 1918 Lincoln S. Always look at your pennies before you throw them away. A 1918 Lincoln S is worth $11,000. Looking at the 1918 Lincoln S wheat penny values today, there is no indication that they had any special value. This may have been written for artistic flair, or may have merely been a joke William was playing on Archie, common to their playful relationship, to get a rise out of Archie. What does the S stand for, you ask? San Francisco, when that U.S. Mint was still creating circulating coins. This is one of the longest reminiscences in the book, as he leisurely takes us through a day at the races with Archie, buying coffee and snacks, focusing on no-name horses, enveloping us in the mood of the place. He ends the chapter, "There was a nice smell at Tanforan, of earth, horses, people, money, hot dogs, hamburgers, coffee, cigarette smoke, and something else. I really don't know what the other thing was. Was it comedy hovering over and crowding around everybody?" Keep in mind, this was in the middle of the Great Depression, but people were still out there gambling for their lives or for fun. This reckless treatment of money was characteristic of Saroyan throughout his life. He had trouble holding on to money earned, mostly because it often went right back into gambling. Tanforan makes other appearances in Saroyan's work as well. In Here Comes, There Goes You Know Who, a memoir published almost 10 years earlier in 1961, Saroyan describes taking his very young children to the local racetracks, including Tanforan. Here Comes, There Goes You Know Who spends a good deal of time discussing his gambling addiction, the way it made him feel both elated and depressed. Losing money at gambling was a lifelong challenge for him, but in a perverse way guided his literary career. His frustration at losing money led to the necessity of writing to pay the bills. He writes, "My annoyance has conditioned what I have written. Consequently, I have a book, a new novel, or a new play, with a style I could not have otherwise put into it. The annoyance about the loss of money, time, and sequence gave the work its style, and now and then that style has been rare enough to please me. A lame explanation? More than lame, crippled. But maybe it's the truth too. How should I know? In the meantime, the facts, as they're called. Las Vegas, 1942, $5,000 lost. The human comedy written. $250,000 earned. Las Vegas again, 1949, $50,000 lost. Tracy's Tiger, Rock for Grom, and The Laughing Matter written. No dollars and no cents earned, but I have the books. They are there, they are going, they will soon be gone perhaps, but until they are being read and readers are getting something out of them." So, this chapter is bittersweet. It has the sweetness of camaraderie and a nice day at the races, but super fans know that this was the beginning of a lifelong struggle with gambling. But in this place and time, we watch Saroyan laughing at life itself. Let's put this place on the Saroyan map and move on.